I've learned that there's cycles, because I've been at, CCB ONE&ALL since I came to America. So it's been almost 19 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And I have seen different people.
Yeah.
Like there's
You speak really good English for 19
I do speak English. I woke up speaking.
Speak English,
I came from Wakanda forever. From Wakanda. I came from Wakanda.
My son thought he was from Wakanda.
Well, what's up, guys? This is
Hey.
Thanks for having us on.
I know.
Good
I
to
have
be back.
all the campus pastors here. I have Pastor Matt, Pastor Michael, and Pastor Kelly. West Covina, San Dimas, Rancho.
The Siri used to say San Dimas when they used to have the Google stuff when they just came out.
Really?
San Dimas.
San Dimas. Now you got to say that on stage when you host. Throw everybody
when the Google Maps had just coming out. You didn't know what to say.
That was funny. That is really funny. But yeah, you guys are here. Obviously, I got to do an episode with each of you guys.
Yep.
Which was super awesome and had a great response from people. And now I just want to get you three together as pastors and just really talk about what's it like being a pastor, what have been the best things, what have been the challenging things, thoughts on just, well, I'll ask this question. Did you guys think that you were going to be a pastor?
Not in mine. I'll say no. Wasn't in my plan, my strategic plan, nothing.
Definitely not.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I was going to say,
Michael
I don't think
I
maybe
did.
the most,
I had an idea.
Correct.
Yeah, I didn't know where, but I had an idea. Inclination.
Yeah. And often when we meet pastors, that's usually the kind of the general answer of like, I had no clue I was going to do this. And
Really?
sometimes, no, like other people.
Oh.
Me, I guess. Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
Like most people say they did not know they were going to do it.
Sometimes. Well, okay. Yeah. Maybe that's just my own experience with people or with pastors where it was just like, I realized it until in my 20s,
Oh, okay.
30s or 40s. Like, I realized like I'm called to this. But then, of course, there are the people that are just like right after high school.
Right.
They know they're calling or going to Bible college, doing the thing. But yeah, so it must be very interesting from your guys' perspective to be like, I did not know that this was going to be a thing, and it just got brought up. And so, what was that like? Like Kelly, for you, what was that like?
I don't think anyone was more surprised than I was. No, it was. It was a kind of an evolution, I suppose, like of serving and then just God continuously opening different doors. But yeah, it was definitely surreal. Now looking back, I think I can see, when I first started, I felt like, I am not equipped for this. I'm not qualified for this. I didn't go to seminary. I haven't had all this training. And now looking back, I was watching your episode. I can see the way God has used all of the strange random experiences along my journey that come in handy now, but at the time I was like, what?
right. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's awesome. What about you, Matt?
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it, but
That's just like she said. For me, I was like, "Are you sure?" Looking around, right? Pastor Jeff, I didn't even prepare for this.
Yeah.
But that also was my journey of figuring out, like, I didn't feel it. I felt so insecure. I felt like, or that I messed up and I didn't listen to God, and when I should have been listening. And like Pastor Michael talks about the whispers. Where were the whispers? I didn't hear them. I missed it over the 45 years of my life. What happened? But to Kelly's point, man, how God used everything.
Yeah.
He said, "Nope, I didn't want you that way. I wanted you this way.
Yeah.
Now are you ready to follow me and be my messenger? And will you say yes?" And I had to say, "Here am I. Send me." So,
Right.
Here
Absolutely.
am I, Lord.
I knew it was coming.
I was working on my testimony for the first
That's
first 3 quarters of my life. That way I could relate to all of that.
Right. Yeah. Definitely intentionally working the
That's right.
testimony.
Yeah.
Making my decisions, knowing that this is going to help somebody in the future.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, exactly. And then for you, Michael, obviously you had some inclination that you wanted to go into ministry. You were doing this.
I did. It was interesting because, of course, growing up in Uganda, you grow up. And then actually I was, I wanted to do music. I did music a little bit. And then we were at a prayer meeting and somebody said, hey, God is going to use you. And I was like, well, I'm always like skeptical of these prophets, whatever. But it was a word of knowledge. I was like, hey, God is saying he's going to use you, to speak to people. I'm like, okay, great. I put it in my mind. I never thought about it. And then it wasn't until I was actually on a Watoto tour and I was in Chicago. I remember we were in Chicago and I can't remember the road, but, we're going to that, what's that building that you stand on glass, whatever? I don't know. Anyway, so we were there and just a whisper just said, you're coming back here to serve me. And I was like, what was that? Okay. And I kept it to myself. I was like, that's weird. Because everybody wants to come to America. Everybody wants to come to America. So I thought, was that just my thought? That I want to come back to America? Or was that like a real thing?
Yeah.
But I kept it to myself. And then, of course, I got married to my wife. And then, we weren't planning to come back here. And then, when I got back here, I started leading worship in Uganda. And then I ended up going to be a youth pastor at a Christian school. And that's why I said, I actually like doing this.
Yeah.
I was a DJ. I was a radio DJ. And
You're a DJ?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah, on the morning station. Yeah, morning show.
Wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
I did that for a long time.
Did you have a DJ name?
Yeah.
What?
I don't know.
Yeah, I knew that was you.
It sounds a little weird in American English. So I don't know what I want to say.
Yeah.
Every time I say, people say like, what?
Yeah, that's really funny.
So I'm not going to say it here. But anyway, I did that. And then once I did the youth thing, then I came to America.
Yeah.
And then I did a secular job. Then I was like, you know what? I say just feeling prompting to go to seminary. And so it opened up. I went to APU and
Yeah. And the rest is history.
Yeah.
And
so,
San Dimas, the people love you.
Yeah, thank you.
And so, that's literally every campus. The privilege of being the digital pastor is that I get to go to a lot of the campuses whenever.
Sweet.
And so anytime I'm over there, I just see how people light up. When you guys are around, and with the coolest thing, and we'll get more into it, is you guys really don't make it about yourselves.
Thank you.
And you don't often see that a lot in different churches. And so I think something that would be really cool to talk about is now with your guys' experiences stepping into pastoral roles. Like, I'm sure you had a definition of what a pastor was then. But like, what is the definition now? We can start with Kelly.
I thought, when I thought of a pastor, I thought of, well, if you asked me far enough back, I'd tell you I thought of like a televangelist. And then it just I associated it far more with preaching than I did with shepherding. And I think now that's how I would define it is as a shepherd. It's much more, especially on the campus pastor side. It's much more about relationships and caring for people, congregation.
Absolutely. Michael, if you have.
Yeah, that's
I'm assuming every answer is going to be just a piggyback.
I think because I grew up in church, so I saw what it meant. Like, because the church I grew up was, the guy came from Canada, and he saw a broken, war-torn country, and of course I watched him shepherd people.
Wow,
and so my looking at him and looking at, okay, I knew that it wasn't just about the stage. There was just a lot more to it. So I had a pretty good idea of what being a pastor is. There are other aspects I didn't know about, which we can share later. I knew, okay, this is what it means. You're taking care of people. You're helping them with brokenness and things like that. Seeing demon-possessed people. I knew all that stuff involved being a pastor. So, And my favorite verse one of the things that I used is I think it's Psalm 78, and it's one of the last verses. And it says he chose David and called him out of taking care of ewes and sheep, and then it asked him to take care of and to shepherd his people.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
So
think it
that's-
talks about that in First Peter. too.
Yeah.
First Peter 2,
Yeah.
he called David out to
Yeah.
shepherd with integrity of heart and skillful hands.
Mhm.
So that's like one of, that's my idea of
Right.
being
Yeah.
a shepherd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I thought it was gonna be preaching too, but that was gonna use that as my way out when I talked to Pastor Jeff. I'm like, Pastor Jeff,
That's funny. Yeah.
all right, you invited me, but I can't be a pastor. And he said, why not? And I said, because I don't preach. I've never preached. I've done great presentations, high executive presentations,
Yeah.
team presentations, all kinds of stuff in business, but doing that. And he said, well, that's okay, because you're going to be a video campus. I'm like, what? What does this mean? So you got to figure that out. But being pastoring, what I've learned as a campus pastor,
Yeah.
I mean, there's all different kinds of pastors,
That's
in
true.
our,
Right.
even within our church. And I love it. Digital pastor. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's cool. I never
Yeah.
thought you could be a digital pastor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I should
me
have signed
neither.
up for that one, man. I was gonna, back then you're thinking when everything's coming out, that's the way to go, digital.
Yeah.
But being a campus pastor, I love it. But I've also been able to be grateful
Mhm.
how God is able to use, because that's what He reminded me of.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is why I brought you here, because growing up I went to business school. I
Yeah.
didn't have any theological training.
Yeah.
And I kind
So
of
did I.
yeah, exactly.
We're
Right,
both marketing.
That's where they're good at their
Marketing,
jobs.
sales.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's where they're good at their jobs.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we get to use a lot of that. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh God, thank you. You gave me a couple, man. I can use some experience,
for
life
sure.
experience and work experience. But also we wear so many different hats. It's I love the shepherding,
Mhm.
connecting with
Mhm.
people, very relational in everything we
Yeah.
do,
Correct.
for sure. But also the different hats of wearing. Sometimes I got to be a general manager. We kind of
Yeah.
run the plant.
No,
Sometimes
100%.
we have restroom issues. Or things. We got to work
Budgets.
on the budgets. Yeah, we're doing
Yeah.
budgeting. I love doing the strategizing, and we're
Yeah.
figuring that out. We also get to use marketing.
Marketing. Yeah.
We're doing a lot of social media and how do we market to our community?
Right.
The business
Event
aspect
planning.
of relational,
There's just so many. Yeah,
so many of it.
everything.
Yep,
The care.
the care part. Customer service. That's
Customer
what I learned in
service.
business, right?
Yeah.
Doing that. Yeah. And even just the networking,
Yeah.
that's we call that fellowship, but
Mhm.
the business world's called networking. Right. So I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
God, I see
yeah.
the bridges.
Right.
We can
right.
do this. So that's all mixed into being a campus
Right.
pastor.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Oh, absolutely. I love all of your guys' answers. When I think of like pastoring, I don't know if this is good or bad thing, but there's a show called The Bear. And it's a really, really good show. It's about this character who's like, he was high up in the chef world. He's a
Oh, okay.
chef. And then his brother dies. And so he takes over his restaurant. And it's just talking about the inner workings of just a like hole in the wall beef sandwich Italian place in Chicago. And it's so interesting because there's a particular episode, I won't ruin it for people. And it's a secular show. So there's
Sure.
but this is the way I think of it, is that if you're a pastor in like Chicago and you're in that culture, you're going to hear everything and anything,
Yeah.
no matter what. So when I look at the show, I'm like, this is actually like a great viewpoint of the
Mhm.
culture in Chicago. And this is like what you would see and all this stuff. But anyways, all that to say is that there's an episode where it's kind of like a flashback with the brother, and he's talking to one of the workers, and she is not working there yet. But she literally just showed up there to have a sandwich because she couldn't find a job anywhere. She's like at the breaking point
Right.
of like, I can't get a job, I can't anything. And he notices her crying. The brother does. And so he sits with her and he's just talking to her like nothing.
Yeah.
And then they just talk about the world and how crappy it is. And then he talks about the shop, like, because she asked him, like, do you love it here? And he's like, and it's this great I guess, monologue of him literally talking about how awful it is. Like literally saying everything's breaking down. I have people cussing at me. I'm cussing at other people. Like all the deliveries, like they're not here on time, and I got back orders. And he's just everybody's yelling all this stuff. And then he's like pausing. He's like, but yeah, I do love it.
Yeah.
He's like, I do love it. I do love the people. I love seeing everybody who comes in. I love talking to this person. I love saying that. I love working with my cousins. Like it's all of this. And I remember like as I was sitting watching that, I was like, that is one of the best ways to talk about like what's it like being a pastor. And it's like it's good and bad in one sense, but it's true. It's like we see a lot of things that not a lot of people are used to or even want to get into.
Yep.
And the church life, the way it is, there's so many different types of people that we're dealing with, that we're handling. And some days, like me personally, I'm like, I don't know, God, why you wanted me here. I want out. Like, let me, like I'll do a coffee shop job. Like that's, and then I'll be fine. And then it's like, God reminds you of the, like, nah, you love it.
And then something cool happens and it fills your cup back up and you're like, oh, that's why I love what I do.
Exactly.
I think going back to what you thought being a pastor was, I think so many people have kind of a whitewashed idea of what they assume it's like even to work in a church.
Right.
Just that it's, and I think a church or being a pastor can be messy, just like any job, any organization with people in it. We all have good days, bad days. There's days I come home and I'm just like, please don't talk to me. It was a very people-y day, And I love people. But some days I'm just like, oh, I just need to zone out right now.
Did you mean us people or you mean?
I think it's the because we live in California, you have, when you stage, that 1% you're on stage, people think it's the glamorous thing.
Yeah.
You're like, 100%.
You're like, on stage, it's so cool,
I don't know, 50% of our job is meetings.
But they don't see that other, let's say 5% is on stage, whatever.
Yeah.
But the other 95% is it's digging, it's doing all those things, it's the hard work that people don't get to see,
Right.
Stage is like,
Sunday's the easy part.
Sunday's the easy part.
Truly
the fun part.
Yeah, it is the fun part.
Love that part.
It's the best part too, as you see people coming to Jesus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Raising hands, following Jesus. That's good stuff.
And those are the wins that I love.
Yeah.
That's what makes everything so worth it.
Yeah.
Especially if you know him and you invited him, one of your family or friends, you're like, I invited that guy back to church,
Yes.
And but then to see other people, like if you're coming in and you bring somebody with you, hey, Pastor Matt, I brought this guy with me. Okay, cool. And he raises his hand in church, and you're like, yes.
That is
sometimes I start crying in church, I'm just like, But that's what you're like, okay, God, we're here. We're all here for the mission, bringing people far from God near. So,
absolutely.
It makes it all worth it.
Oh, definitely. Is there a particular story? You don't have to say names or specific details, but is there any story that highlights to you of when you like that moment where you're like, wow, I literally walked with this person in this and I got to see their life be transformed by Jesus. If you guys have
all the time. I'll jump in right away. First one I thought there was a young adult. She serves on our kids team, and she's been praying for probably as long as I've known her. Come in, praying for her mom to come to church, praying for her sister to come, and that they would just know God. None of their background was just anything connected to Christ. And so she's been faithfully coming, serving. And to see one morning she comes and says, Pastor Matt, this is my mom. And I said, oh yes. So of course I went up, got to meet her and your sister. They both came. And she was just so excited. She had that shining brightness of her, and just like, they at least came to church. But that same morning in service, her mom raises her hand for salvation, to receive Christ.
That's awesome.
And she's looking at her like she didn't make her do that. She's like, I can't believe she's doing this the first time she came. And she was just so grateful and I mean, tears and just that's her like, oh God, you hear every single person's cry, their prayers, that everybody matters. And you saw them right there. So
that's awesome. That's a great story.
So worth it.
Yeah, the one that I, of course, the one that we showed this past weekend, that was a good one, Christine. You can watch that on YouTube. I think it should be up right now. But that was a good story too. She comes and she's just a mess, and she's like, man, I'm a mess. I need some help. And, I remember seeing her, I was like, okay, what can we do? And she says, I'm gay, I'm this, I'm all that. And I'm like, okay. We love you. Let's pray for you, and and then I'm going to connect you to Pastor Ron Hall, and connect you to Pastor Ron Hall, and then Don Hall, and a community group, and just seeing that life change of somebody growing, And then of course, many times, same thing. Hey, someone brings a one life. This is my person. They're here for the very first time. Then all of a sudden you're raising your hands. It happens all the time. You're like, wow, this is awesome to see that, Or youth bringing their parents.
Oh, yes. Oh, those are
kids too.
Huge.
Kids bringing their parents.
Huge.
Yeah.
I love it. So
mine, It was a young lady who didn't even attend our church. Somebody reached out and said, "Hey, I know this young mom who just through a series of kind of bad choices and bad luck was living in her car. She had lost custody of her kids. Her 2 kids, was estranged from her parents, and her parents was talking to someone, and they were like, "Well, I know this pastor who's in that area. Let me connect and see if she'd be willing to meet with her." And so we met at an Applebee's and had lunch and kind of hit it off. And we ended up doing a Bible study together. And she started coming to church. I connected her with God's Pantry, got her out of her car. She got into a shelter. She ended up accepting Jesus and was baptized. And then her parents came into town and they wanted to meet me because they hadn't met me, and then they ended up getting baptized. And then her One Lives, she brought her One Lives, and they were from like, kind of a rough area of town. Like none of these people were church people, and they all ended up getting baptized. And it was such a awesome. Neat thing. And now like whenever she's in town now, she'll drop in and say hi. That's and like, cool. Now she has her own place. She's reunited with her kids. She's got a job. And
that's super
like,
cool.
That is very, very gratifying.
Oh,
just to see God working in somebody's life like that.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. There's a couple of things now that I kind of want to talk about. Just like the theme, obviously, that you guys are talking about with these stories is you guys are very welcoming, right? And like the power of being warm, being welcoming, being kind and compassionate. There's a lot of churches that definitely struggle with that or really want to make a hard stance out the gate, and the invitations is ripped up. You know what I mean? Because of that hard stance or whatever they do. But something that kind of like this theme that we're seeing here is the importance of a pastor being able to welcome all kinds of people. Now, and then with that said, though, is that we are a lot like Jesus, or we model the shepherd we model our shepherdness after the good shepherd. And so obviously it's like, we welcome you and we want you to experience Jesus so that way you can be transformed by him. And so just to like speak more on that of that welcomeness. Has it been challenging in some senses, or has it just always been like, no, I'll walk with you? Or what's I don't know, because we can't be stretched thin. I mean, we can, but sometimes it's heavy. So how do you guys balance that?
It's a good question. I think one of the ways I look at it is I've been to churches where I've not been welcomed, and where people just ignore you, and they, and just it really is disappointing. You walk into and nobody greets you, and I can feel that. So one of the things we have on our campuses is, man, we've got to have a good welcoming culture. Everybody, the greeting team, you're welcoming. It doesn't have to be us. And then the other thing that we do that I know that I have heard mentioned that we all do, 3 of us, is we're on the patio. We're not out chilling out in the back. On the patio, greeting people, meeting them, saying hello, because that is why we're there. That is very, very important. The other thing that I also always think about personally is I'm a sinner. And when people come and they're broken, I cannot be all high, So I remember that I am broken too, and that Christ is healing me, and those people are coming in are, that for me is one of my, like, I'm still working on my salvation.
Right.
They are coming in and they need salvation, so I'm gonna hug them and bring them in. Let's go.
I can very clearly remember going to a church all by myself in my late 20s, being, in a dark place in my life and feeling really nervous about walking through the door, not knowing anyone, not knowing what to expect. I'd grown up Catholic. Like I was like, whoa, what are they doing? They're singing so loud and boisterously. But, just I remember what that felt like. And so probably my favorite time on a Sunday is before service starts, when you see those people come in and they're sitting, especially if they're sitting there by themselves.
Yeah.
I love to just walk around the worship center before service starts and just sit down and talk to people and chat with them and, find out a little bit about them and things like that. And I think that goes a really long way just at putting people's, helping them to feel comfortable, and less alone. And then it's bonus if you can like introduce them, if somebody comes in that because we're all creatures of habit and everybody likes to sit in the same seat. And then you introduce them to the people around them, and that's really neat because now they've made some connections and you can just kind of see their shoulders drop.
Some people love their seats too much, but
I'm so sorry. We're very territorial. Yeah, that's all right.
I can tease, but I tend to be a creature of habit too. I just sit in the same spot.
That's true.
For me, the welcoming, the guest experience, that is so crucial.
Yeah.
So crucial. And that's one thing in becoming a pastor that I learned. That's what I learned from business. If I wanted to succeed in sales, I was in sales side.
Yeah.
If I wanted to succeed in sales, everybody had to feel like they belonged, that I knew them, that I knew their name. And if I knew more about them, the better. You're just strengthening those relationships. And that's the way I actually did business. It was purely relational first.
Yeah.
And then you're going to ask me, what the heck do you even sell? Oh, yeah, let me tell you about it, right?
Yeah,
that was, to me, that was always secondary. It was after. And so in our church and welcoming, I love seeking out people. I want to look for the guy who's in the corner or the girl who's just off to themselves and feels like, should I even be here? Do I even belong here? What am I doing here? And I said, that's the one, because if Jesus cared for the least of these, that's the ones I want to go after first. I want to say, hey, come on along with us. I don't know you, but I want to know you. What's your name? Let's get you in. And just the power of the name.
Yeah.
Knowing I get very, very, actually very emotional too, but I get very excited and just so pumped just to know that Jesus called me.
Yeah.
He knows my name. He loved me even before the world began.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, man, if he cares that much about me, I want to show others this is the God we serve, man. Come along with us. What are you doing even trying anything else?
Yeah.
This is the only way, the truth, and the life. Let's go this way. Right? So it's that whole welcoming for me is really everything gospel. And then everything else is, how can I make you feel, come with us, invite you in.
Yeah. And what's our name? One and all.
Yeah. No, you're
one Christ
right.
died for all people.
And I think that's one of the coolest things about our job is being able to walk with people through those seasons in their life.
Yeah.
And watching them come in new and then having them come up. Like, I think of couples that I've prayed with that have gone through, trying to conceive, miscarriages, the birth of a baby, and getting to pray with them through it all. And then, watching their kids grow up and just to be along for that journey. And it creates a special bond, when you have the opportunity to pray for people as they're going through those kinds of real life things.
Yep.
And I feel like, at least for me, that is what fills my cup. So if we didn't take the time to get to know people, you're robbing yourself of such a joy, such a gift that God allows us to have.
Oh, definitely. There's been even times being online, I can't be there in person for a lot of people. But just even getting the back and forth consistently, you get the back and forth emails, or even if it's a Zoom or anything like that. I've noticed even in those things have given life. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, like there is really no distance. There's no anything that God can't do with pastors and within the cities or globally. And so it's really cool to see that welcoming piece. One, for our church, obviously, that we are we're hard pressed on it. I mean, every huddle that I've been to at every campus, you guys like really, really do preach like, hey, we want people to feel welcome the moment they park. I mean, even before they park, we want them to, feel welcomed and feel known. And it's not just to get a number. Like that's the thing is that a lot of churches, a lot of people have that perception of churches. Like you say you do, you're welcoming. You say you want this, but you just want the next number. You want to reach the bigger audience. You want to, you want that. But in our case, it's like, no. And we'll show you why you're not just a number. Because it's from the beginning all the way till after service, all the way till wanting you to join something that's going to help you know Jesus a lot better and a lot deeper. And kind of what you're saying, like walking alongside people, sometimes can be really tough. I kind of want to transition into kind of the heavier things.
Sure.
I mean, I'm pretty young in the ministry. I grew up in church. We grew up in church. My parents pastors and all this stuff. So I've always seen it from a distance. But then when I stepped into this role, when you really walk with people who have heavy things that they're going on, like it's not, there's a moment where you're like, I'm going to pray and that's the most powerful thing I can do. But even that seems like it's not enough for people, And so what does it look like when you really carry the burden for other people? And is there like, do you guys bring it with you? Like, how do you balance your own life and then all the heavier stuff from everybody else?
That's always I think that balance is always the goal to try to figure out.
Correct.
Each and every person, that we meet.
It's good.
It's I wish there was a book, they could just say, do this and this and this and you're done. But it's always maneuvering back and forth and trying to figure out what is that balance. But each person, again, he's a custom God. We're masterpieces of his works. That means we're all individual and we look like him, thank God, so we're beautiful, but we're the masterpieces. That means we're all unique as well. So we also have to keep that in mind as we work and walk alongside different people too. And sometimes it also helps the balance piece is finding other people who maybe I'm not the best to connect with that person, but I know somebody in the church that just went through that. Hey, come on, man. You're going to come help me disciple right here. Let's go together.
Because I will say, like, if let's say there's approximately 1,000 people at Rancho on a Sunday, like I can't connect with everyone.
Right.
So it is definitely not a one person endeavor. Like there is no way in a million zillion years that our campus or any of our campuses would be what they are without our team.
Yeah,
like
100%.
I mean, not only do we have a team of incredible other pastors that we work with, but we also just have team members, people that just show up on Sunday, and that's what God has called them to do. Some of them are far better at it than I am. You know what I mean? At stopping or their spiritual gift, their prayer, or their passion is praying for people, or budget counseling, or like it is definitely not something that I can do by myself.
Right.
Yeah. There are moments that you have with people that are, like when you sit down with that mother, or when you that can actually, you go home and you're like, man, that's a hard one. Or like recently my friend passed away, like, man, that's a hard one. You struggle with cancer, or you have like 3 people at the same time, in the church that are going through cancer. And then everyone wants a pastor to pray, and it's hard because these are people these are people you love, and so
sometimes they're family.
They're sometimes their family, or maybe the times when it's a weekend, the whole weekend, like service after service, I've heard just a heavy story. And then I go home and I'm like, that's heavy. And so that one of the things I do is like, okay, I'm going to give it to you, but sometimes it really emotionally it's exhausting. It can be very exhausting. So just being honest, it can be very exhausting. And so you get home and, okay, I need to take this off. Or you sit in the car and you try just straight to take it off before you get to the house. The good thing is, my family just has learned. Like sometimes I'll come out like, it's been a heavy weekend. And they get it. and they've learned to adapt. Just put on Mr. Bean or something to watch. Or Home Improvement.
Oh my God.
That's funny.
Even still on?
Yeah.
It is. No, it's not on. I never watched it because I grew up in another country.
Yeah.
So now I'm just catching up. I'm like,
This is your first time watching it.
it's my first time watching it.
That's funny.
So I'll just watch something to kind of
Yeah.
But yes,
Compress.
but
Yeah.
absolutely true. We can't do it without other people.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
So sometimes I'll be
Sure.
like, no, that's for you.
Yeah.
No, that's for you. Like, if someone shares a story, I'm like, yeah, that's too much. And especially if it's a woman.
Or there's somebody that I know.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll meet a man out on the patio, and he starts to talk to me, and I'll be like, you know what?
Yes.
He would click great with my husband.
Yeah.
And honestly,
Yeah,
I
which is
just
true.
know that, Eric can help him more or whatever it is. So I'll connect the two of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of different people. And I think there are times, first of all, you have the people aspect and the emotional aspect that can be draining sometimes, just being as it is. Like you care.
You
So
care.
you carry other people's burdens with you.
Yeah.
And then you have just the logistical challenges of the job. And it can be very complicated. We're managing large organizations.
Yeah. Right.
And budgets and all of these moving pieces. And then, we're all married with children.
Yeah.
So we have families, we have finances. I've got 3 teenagers, you know what I mean? So
and they all need,
so there's
dad
all
and
of
mom.
there's all of that too. So there are those seasons that are just really tiring. I'm glad, I'm very fortunate that I get to work with these guys and the people I work with, because they are my brothers. They're my confidants, and they can relate because we're all going through the same thing, and they're stinking funny.
Yeah, it was good.
Thank you.
Sometimes funnier than others. Just kidding.
That's great.
But that helps. When you love what you do, God calls us to do what we do, not out of obligation, but to do it enthusiastically.
Because you're called.
Because we're called.
Right.
Yeah, it's a different
And so
thing.
there are those times that are tiring and draining,
Yeah.
and then you're grateful for the times that.
But then you
that it
remember
feels
your
called.
call.
But you remember your call,
Yes.
and you gotta give it to God.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
times there's just so much time that I'm like, okay, God, fill in this gap because I don't think I'm qualified.
Yeah.
Or God, I am way overwhelmed. Please give me strength.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
Please help me from not wanting to kill this person, because that wouldn't be very pastoral.
The other thing that is pretty cool that I've learned to do is, this is your church.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Handle this.
Yes.
Not mine.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to share, one time someone just yelled at me. Right? Literally 2 minutes before service.
I
And I'm
said
like,
sorry afterwards.
Just kidding. Forgiveness. Let's talk. Remember that one?
Like, you're yelling at me right before service starts. Like, can we talk outside?
Yeah.
And then I have to go on stage after hearing this. I'm like,
And be like,
welcome.
welcome.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that what you said though, giving it because it's God's church.
It's God's
It's not
church.
ours.
100%.
But that's one thing I had to learn. That was like a principle I jumped on right away coming into being a pastor.
Mhm.
The God, he's actually against the proud, but he favors the humble.
Yeah.
And I found that so comforting because I said, God, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just, just coming in, from the business side, coming in to be a pastor. What do I do tomorrow, God? Do we call somebody? Do we want me praying right now? We're gonna read, or I get to counsel with Pastor Michael and then train me a little bit, or Kelly's been, but that's the humility part.
Yeah.
God made it very easy for me to have to choose that almost in a sense. I mean, we don't have to, but we get to choose that because of that, just so much to lean on him.
Yeah.
Because knowing that he's got everything, and then the burdens start coming on, how to balance it. It's just like you said, just keep giving it away. Okay, God, that's yours anyways.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I would say all 3 of us are driven personalities.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
We're all that, we expect a lot out of ourselves.
Yeah.
We want excellence. Like, we want to be the best version and grow God's kingdom, right? So there's that drive, but then there's also that balance and just that constant reminder, like, first of all, God gets all the glory.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of cool because it's also, to a large degree, like it's going to be up to him whether this thing happens or whether it doesn't, or whether it grows or whether it doesn't, whether this person comes to Christ or whether they don't. Like, you can
change one.
You can sow the seeds, but ultimately he's gonna reap the harvest.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That's it. That's actually a really big lesson that I've definitely learned as well. Is being like, okay, sometimes it gets overwhelming. Sometimes there's things I can't. That's the other thing about being a pastor is it's okay to not have the answers.
Yeah.
And usually people who are questioning and have the big theological questions, there's a deeper root behind that that is like, I really don't want the answer to the question. I just want to know, why am I going through this?
Yeah.
Or what, all of this stuff. And I've learned that to really be humble. There was one time it was a pastor on call, and the person was going through a really hard time, but all he wanted to do was just debate the historicity of Jesus. And I'm just like, hey, I can sit here with you and I can probably give you all the historical facts. I can do all of these things. I just don't like, for me, that just doesn't help, that much. And so I was like, okay, how can I converse with him, but not, I was like, I don't want to debate. That's not who I am.
It's like, is that really what's keeping you up at night?
Yes, correct. Exactly. And then the more we talked and the more I realized, oh, you're struggling with this, you know what I mean? Like this is where, and then we got to really talk about it. And it was really cool. The hard part was like, it's crazy to see some people just don't want to, I don't know, would you say accept the invitation or accept to admit, sometimes when you're talking with them and you're like right there, you're right there. But, and then all of a sudden it's like, but I don't get it because Jesus, and I'm like,
you're right there. They're just like the rich young ruler.
Yes, 100%.
100%. He's done everything. Sell all your stuff.
Actually, and you're like,
I gotta go.
Right.
But then it's like, when I think back on my story, I remember like there were so many people that had conversations with me, like before I came to Christ. Like, so it's one more seed being planted, or it's one more drip of water on a seed that's eventually going to blossom. Yeah. And so you're part of somebody's story. There's a lot of things. Just because you don't see the fruit doesn't mean that it didn't make a difference.
Yep.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yep. No, that's that is really good. Sometimes you do have to like step outside and just go like, okay, God, I did what you asked, hopefully to the best of my abilities. Right. And now what you're talking about, giving it to him.
It's still him.
Yeah. Holy Spirit, you're doing the work here. You're doing the stirring. You're doing
and God loves that person more than me or you.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Sometimes I think people, when they think of the 99 and the one, I'm always like, sometimes like, you're not the one. You're already in the 99. We're good. I need you to be also a mini shepherd like me. Right. Like, we're good. The one is not you.
The one is not you.
Sometimes. That's one of the challenges. Like as a campus pastor, though, it's because you are like, we want to create a welcoming environment for that one. Yes. For the one who's coming in. Mm-hmm. But it's also our job to care for the 99.
Yes, 100%.
Right? And to recognize their needs or their fears or their blind spots individually or as a congregation. Yes. Because like Pastor Jeff, people will say, do you think I can make an appointment to have coffee with Pastor Jeff? And I'm like, you can try. It's just really hard. I mean, we're a church of thousands and there's only one of him.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of the reason we exist, right? Is that we can be more accessible by at least maybe not everybody, but to a degree.
To a degree,
you know,
so you have community
to be
group
there,
leaders.
and you have community group leaders, and to have that span of care.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's like, while I do want that one, I do. Their soul and their salvation is so important, but I also I want them to stick.
Yes.
And I want them to stay, and I want them to grow, and I want them to feel cared for.
Yeah.
And that can be the hard part, because you also see, you see people come and then you see people go.
Yeah.
And it can be hard, especially when it's people that even that you've invested in, you care about, these are your friends, and then for whatever reason they move on, or they go to a different church, or
different states.
Something made them uncomfortable.
Right.
Different presidents.
And that's hard sometimes, because
everything affects.
You become emotionally invested, and you have to hold on
100%.
loosely, but then you can't help it.
I've learned that there's cycles, because I've been at, CCB ONE&ALL since I came to America. So it's been almost 19 years, maybe.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And I have seen different people.
Yeah.
There's a
You
whole
speak really good English for 19.
I do speak English. I woke up speaking.
Speak English.
Grandma G. I came from Wakanda forever. From Wakanda. I came from Wakanda.
My son thought he was from Wakanda. We served in kids ministry.
That's right.
Before we became pastors, when I first met Pastor Michael, we were serving in kids ministry in worship.
In worship.
It
was crazy.
Sorry.
No, it's great.
Thanks, Kelly.
I speak, that's great. So it's, what was I saying?
You said you've been at their cycles.
Oh, cycles of people.
Yeah.
You see people for 10 years, then all of a sudden there's a new crowd.
Yeah.
Because people get married or get new jobs.
Yeah.
Or maybe, I'm also learning something interesting, that certain churches have different places in people's lives. So you might go to a church that is more seeker-friendly for people who are new. And then all of a sudden someone wants something deeper, they'll move to another church.
Yeah.
And then they want, maybe a smaller church, because maybe I'm starting to see that pattern.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, it's not okay. It's all right. It's not like, they might be at ONE&ALL for 10 years, and that God wanted them there for that reason. Now God moves them to another place because maybe he wants them to meet somebody else. So I'm kind of like, it's all right, Now, if they can be there for 50 years, great.
Right.
Awesome,
Yeah.
But I'm starting to see those patterns.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. And Kelly, you kind of touched on something that I haven't really thought about, but it is a kind of a grieving process for those cycles
It is.
for us, because obviously we're hopeful in pastoring. We want to see you develop a strong relationship with Jesus, and then if we don't see you, it is a loss. It's not even a loss for the church. We don't care about that. It's really a loss for us.
Yeah.
Personally,
I've had a bunch of friends from the church that left and go to other church, and you're like, oh, was it something I said? But you know, it's sad, because you look forward to seeing them and seeing their kids grow and that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. So there's a
it's like having a friend move away.
We always say that we want to be relational. We're going to be so relational. But then with relational comes, the bigger sense of loss or some of the hard things you have to work through, because you are relational. You start knowing a lot more. About people. Like, wow, we got to work through this out now.
Correct.
And people become a lot more comfortable telling you their opinions.
That's true too.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm sure. All of us have those people that were like, all right, what is it today?
But the cool thing, I think, is through the discipleship process, because as much as you love the people, you want them to be comfortable, you want them to like the church and feel comfortable there, we also want them to grow. Right.
Yeah.
And growth is stretching and pushing people outside of their comfort zones, and sometimes having to make changes that go against their personal preferences. Because our job, it's kind of like I always say, we're like foreign ambassadors. It's like to balance the needs of our local campus with the central vision of the church as a whole. And so you're balancing this out. So sometimes you're pushing them outside of their comfort zones. And I think it's that relational aspect that that helps to make that possible.
Yeah.
Because if they weren't connected, not just to me,
Yeah.
but to their community groups, to their kids' pastor, if they didn't have friends, it would be much easier. As soon as Pastor Jeff said something from the stage that made them like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give that up. Oh, that like, I feel convicted. I'll just go to another church.
Yeah.
We're surrounded by awesome churches. It's easy to just hop around.
Yeah.
But it's those relationships that keep people there past their, and that allows them to be stretched a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I think that those relationships and those connections are so important,
Right.
not just because it's fun to go to church, but it's also important for their spiritual growth.
Right. Right. Yeah. What is that? I wanted to touch upon that too, of like that balance of like, I'm your pastor. I care for you. I want to be there for you, but I also want to stretch you, help you understand the Bible more. I want to walk with you on, what like, how are you growing deeper with Christ? And sometimes as pastors, we like to be friends and not the pastor, or friends and just kind of like, whatever, and just avoid a hard topic, whether it be theologically or even situationally. So like, how are you more prone to be more of the friend, or are you more prone to be not, I don't want to say a challenger because it sounds more aggressive, but somebody who can really help the person be challenged in the Bible and growing in their faith? Like what does that look like? Where do you?
I think it's through both, because, or at least for me, I know I'm sure we'll all be different on this one, but it's through friendships or that relational connection.
Yeah.
That then allows me to break down the bridges to say, okay, hey, I care about you.
Yeah.
I love you. How we're going to, let's figure this out. Then you can start stepping into that uncomfortableness of, okay, let's start working through whatever that level of discipleship you might be in, or truths you're trying to uncover and tackle. And just for how do we get closer to Christ? Let's do it together. Yeah. And let's do that friendship and relational, I think it's through that. If I didn't have that relational, now you're going to say, you're just judging me. Right. And
you have to earn the right sometimes to speak into somebody's life.
Yeah.
Like,
for sure.
It's good.
Yeah.
I agree 100% with them.
Yeah.
The other aspect that I would add, though, is sometimes I put on my pastoral hat. So Pastor Jesus has that thing where now when I'm talking to somebody, I'm like, and I may not even know them very well, but I'm going to be like, okay, now I'm going to talk to you as like, this is my job, and this is, I'm going to talk to you like this.
Yeah.
And I, not in like a rude way, but I'm going to help you understand this. And I, let's talk about this. And let's, I've had several conversations like this where someone comes to me and says, I don't want to give because I don't know, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. And then you find out, just like you said, with that other person, why is this you don't want to, or is there something deeper? And so for me, I'm always trying to find out, why are you acting like this?
Yeah.
I had another conversation with somebody who was, wondering about, I've had several people talk about the screen. Why am I, why sometimes you Pastor Jeff on the screen? And we talk about that, okay? And I may not even know these people, but now I may not know them because, again, I have how many people? 3,000 here. Yeah. And you have two, I may not know everyone personally, but if they come to me, I have to figure out a way to tell them, without making them feel.
Why we have female campus pastors.
Exactly.
They all go to Michael. He's like, I got another one, Kelly.
Great.
So there are those things where I'm not necessarily going to put on my friendship hat. I'm just going to put on I'm just going to tell you.
Hat,
and then you choose again, like she said, there are many awesome churches. That's okay. Like, I'm just going to do what I see scripturally the Bible saying. If I get another new where it's like, oh, I didn't get that maybe.
Yeah.
But there are times when, and then also I'm also learning from Pastor Jeff, which is a really interesting one. He has a way sometimes he'll be like, no, not in a sense of at some point the buck stops with somebody.
Right.
And you can't just be like every time just trying to appease everybody.
Right.
So that at some point, who is the leader?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I'm a people pleaser at heart. Like, I love being there for people. I love, I want to please them any way I can. And sometimes it's to a fault because I will land in that where it's just like, it's almost like, okay, but what do you believe? Or like, no, I wouldn't say that, but more like, okay, well, what are you trying to tell me? Or like, well, then I guess I am okay because you're not giving me the hard challenges. You're not, and the hard challenges as in like, you're really not pressing in on what Jesus is trying to expose or trying to reach deep down to help other people know that. And so I've learned the hard way. I mean, coming out of Bible college, even though I go back and forth sometimes, but whenever somebody tells me, hey, I want to be a pastor, I always say Bible college is important. Absolutely. It helps ground you a little bit. If you're going there to be transformed by Jesus and to develop your faith and to know how to help people, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Go do it. Go get your degree. But if people are like, oh, but, or if they just want it to just preach, to be on stage, to kind of have the influence, I'm like, you're not going to get anything out of it at all. And so coming out of Bible college, I've realized like, I don't have all the answers. Like, even though I came from a school like that, I still have so much to learn, still so much to understand.
Part of it is experience.
Yes, 100%.
So for example, I know Matt and Kelly have not been necessarily to like seminary, but they've got experience in life.
Right.
So that allows them to be able to speak into, they've gotten some Bible education, but they've also gotten life. And that is fantastic for a lot of people because sometimes you miss that. Where they are in life is like, man, they've got kids, they've got marriages, they've run businesses, they've been through ups and downs. So man, that's life. That's shepherding right there.
Right.
So
we went to the seminary of the school of hard knocks.
It's a hard knock.
But I do think though, that it does help you to be able to speak hard truths into people's lives if they know that you're speaking from experience, and you can relate and love. Like I still have a lot of things to work on, right? But if I'm talking to them, I'm trying to model, trying to practice what I preach, right? I'm trying to live those things out,
right?
Not perfectly, but I'm trying. Right. And so, and there have been those things I've gone through, or those mistakes that I've made, or the ways I've seen God move in my life that I can share with them. So it's not coming from like a pharisaical or a holier than thou, like I am the pastor, you need to just listen to what I say. And I'm like, no, I've been there.
Pastor Jeff has done a great job of that, hasn't he? Pastor Jeff, he's very open about, hey, this is my weakness.
Authenticity is so important.
I was gonna say authenticity is huge, especially for pastors to be with. I don't know if you had,
especially the vulnerability. That's a big thing. Brene Brown was big on that. I read some stuff, watched some of her videos. How big that was. Just when you're so vulnerable to share. Like, even that we struggle, I tell people all the time, I'm like, okay, because I'm a pastor doesn't mean I don't hurt, doesn't mean gives me extra, He's giving me strength, but I gotta ask for it too.
It doesn't mean you walk on some like spiritual high return.
Exactly.
Sometimes my cup breaks down, and I'm like,
where's that faith? Come on, I believe.
Both cars are down. You're like, what do I do right now? It's like, or your kid is sick and you haven't slept all night because maybe we all go through that stuff where your kids are even pastoral kids where your kid is struggling with their faith.
For sure.
And people think, absolutely, we do our best, but when the kid gets 18, 19,
they are they're on their own journey.
Right. So we're not perfect. We're human, and this is very important for people to know. We're not, I wasn't going to say a name, but we're not out there doing stuff.
I hear you.
Should have bought a Honda, I'm sorry. No, we're not. It's not. You do your best. And we're still trying to walk and to be like Jesus, but
and we're still on the journey.
We're still on the journey.
God calls us to be home.
I have spiritual mentors that are not pastors. They're way further along the journey than I am. I look up to them. So there's Yeah.
Oh, that's so true. And going to, I don't have kids, but I was a kid, youngest of 5.
Yeah. I hope you were a kid. I hope you were a kid.
You just come out like that with a beard.
Yeah.
I was a kid.
Yeah, but I was, but what was I saying? Oh, but, 18, 19, 20, like I definitely questioned everything. And if it wasn't for my parents that were able to have conversations and a cousin who was who helped with that as
Pastor
well.
Matt has cousins.
Yeah.
Just a couple.
FBI.
Trying to grow the church.
That's right. I reap the benefits even all the way on that far side of
I think I track his family all the way to like Abraham.
Abraham.
But yeah, so like I see that, I get that, like the pains. I didn't say pains, but whatever it is as a pastor, like we're all human. We all still go through hard things.
Yeah.
But it does help when we have that experience to walk with somebody who's going through that. I had a very humbling moment when I was trying to help. It was like through an organization where people would reach out to us that were struggling and stuff like that. And I remember a kid, it was all anonymous, lived somewhere else, but reach out through there and like, I'm struggling. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And the situation was that he knew that his dad was cheating on his mom, and his mom doesn't know it, and he doesn't know what to do. And no experience. I was like, I don't even know, like, what do I even say? And me being me was just more like, okay, well, sit with Jesus on this and like open up your Bible and read this passage and just see what Jesus says. And it was I just was like, just me thinking like, okay, this should help. And thankfully I have people, that are way much wiser than I am. And I just reached out to them and they were just like, Dad, don't say that. And were able to like walk me through that. And it was because they were a magnificent pastor and still are. And just so having that experience, I think sometimes does outweigh the like, I got my MDiv, I got my degree, I know exactly how to do write an exegetical paper. And those are all really, really good things. But
credentials don't equal wisdom.
Yeah, exactly.
Not saying I have wisdom. I'm just saying,
No, exactly. It's so true.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what I'm learning right now is like, is I'm learning the balance of the importance of being biblically literate and wanting to read the Bible, spend time with Jesus, like actually dig through the Bible, but not for the sake of being, having a puffed up chest, not for the sake of being like, oh, I'm having these crazy revelations that nobody's ever talked about. And that's like the funny joke too. It's like
for material.
Yeah, correct. And that's the joke is like anything pastors preach have been said the past 2,000 years.
Nothing is new under the sun.
Yeah. And but the importance of studying with Jesus, having the Bible, but also having the experience to walk with people, to shepherd with people, and not try to be some know-it-all of like, yep, I got the credit. Exactly what you're saying is so important. And just to go as we close, even though I know we could go more, longer, and we'll probably do this. Well, yeah. We'll for sure do this again. But I think as I'm saying all of that, I'm just talking about what you guys do so well.
Thank you.
And truly, like just seeing the way you guys pastor your campus, the campus that God has given you, and always being reminded that it's His church, but also we're walking alongside with these people, and we're also human, but that doesn't excuse us to avoid things or to go deeper in the Bible, but instead it encourages more so. And so, I last question, because I think a lot of people on the digital side who can't come to a campus just because they live globally. I think something that I always see in comments or anything is that they really, obviously they love this church, but it's hard for them to find a church that kind of has our biblical values, has the way we do things. Not saying that we're the end all be all. But
it's just they like the culture.
Yes, correct.
That makes sense.
And so I kind of want to know from each of you of like, if you guys were to go to different churches, or live in a different city and look for a church, what do you look for in the pastor that are there? You know,
it's a good one.
Yeah, you can think about it.
I haven't really shopped around. I mean,
right.
Yeah. What am I looking for in a pastor?
Yeah, like when you go to a church and you're like, because I could probably shoot myself in the foot. But a lot of times people will go to a church not knowing what to look for.
Yeah.
And then they get influenced by a celebrity pastor, or they get influenced by a pastor who wants to be a celebrity pastor.
Yeah.
And you're like, I understand God is moving there, but it's also not healthy.
Sometimes that's a turnoff for me.
Yeah.
I just, I think like the things that we've all talked about, like that we endeavor to be, are the things I would probably look for is authenticity.
Yeah.
Is someone that's relational. I'd much rather have that pastor that's going to walk around and he obviously knows his congregation.
Yeah.
Or now, granted, they can't know everybody. The bigger the church,
yes, 100%.
But like they like people.
Yeah.
That would be a good sign.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what, as I hire pastors to work on our team, I say, they got to love God, but they got to love people.
You gotta love people, man.
Yeah.
You gotta love
It's
people.
really hard to fake that.
Yeah.
And for long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I want to know.
That's the 2 big commandments. Love God, love others.
Look, nothing. I didn't come up with that.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Authenticity, like you said, are they preaching or are they just constantly just preaching and not sharing their life, their stories, who they are? I also tend to look for because usually like the character of the pastor will be reflected on the congregation. So if people are standoffish, I usually think the pastor is standoffish. Yeah. I've noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
People usually reflect the culture of the personality of their pastor.
Yeah.
So if people are welcoming, usually the pastor is very welcoming. Of course, truth. Are they speaking truth? Are they changing things, or are they just saying things as they should be? You know, that's very, very important. In fact, one of the things I've heard is that people love one another because we're not flip-flopping. We're just like, this is what it is.
We're not ear ticklers.
Yeah, we're just
for real though. Yeah.
And people are looking for truth now. People are looking for truth. And the things we're not sure about, we say we're not sure.
Yeah.
Being
honest.
We don't know.
That's a big
we really don't know.
Another thing that goes with authenticity.
We don't know everything. We do our best.
I like to say, hey, that's a really good question. Let me look into that.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you.
Yeah. But if you know everything,
let me call my friend Michael.
You know, it's you can't know everything.
Yeah.
You can't know everything. And 100%. Then also outreach, a lot of outreach stuff, things like that, where it's not just about them.
Yes.
It's about other what that kind of church.
Good.
Yeah. I'll say the ditto on those for sure.
Yeah.
So I'll add on. The other thing I would add on for me is if I were looking for, I'm not trying to change our church, different church than ours, but but I would be looking for. I love that team culture. The team culture, because to me, I was a musician, but also my boys being in different sports, in that team or a band, if you call it that, it's always that chemistry, and you can accomplish huge things when you guys are going together. Everybody's connecting, those relational things. And it's just that closeness, because then you can accomplish, everything God calls to be the body. We're the body of Christ, and
100%.
If we're actually connected, then we're in the body. We're not trying to go separate ways, but doing things as a team, seeing the value of everybody. The diversity, the cultures that we all come from different sides of the tracks or whatever, wherever we're at in life, age-wise, I'm getting towards the higher end now. I'm like, dang, okay, I need more. You help me ask my boys or the youth.
You're becoming a sage.
Great.
I got my stripe in a different way. My white stripe right here. I don't know why the rest doesn't come in, but
it's your racing stripe.
But at least I'm glad. I love having hair. So I'm grateful.
That's true.
That is true.
But but it's just, I love that.
But the one thing I want to say is a lot of times people look for churches because they feel they're not satisfied. And I want to be careful with that, because sometimes you it's not about, you want to be nourished. But a lot of times people are not thinking about giving. All about is like consumerism. You gotta be careful about that.
That's so true.
You have to be careful about just going to church because the pastor makes me happy.
The
pastor, is so good. Like,
Yeah.
But there's another aspect to that.
Right.
Are you giving? Are you growing? Are you
Right.
sacrificing your life?
Are you making a difference?
Making a difference.
Yes.
Yeah, like,
Yes.
Otherwise, I've heard this say, the pastor, like, no, it's not just about you, man.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where, like, for me, I've shared with you guys, I love that small town feel. Like, I want, our campus to feel like Mayberry.
Yeah.
And everybody's got a role to play.
What's that?
Andy Griffith Show.
Oh.
Oh, this time it was them two.
Yeah, we got you. Come on, Kevin.
I can whistle. I can't sing, but I can whistle like a boss. But yeah, to where everybody has that role to play.
Yeah.
And everybody, it's not just a show that you show up for on Sunday and you watch it and then you leave.
Yeah.
I know those people, they always get frustrated because once they end up seeing something they don't like,
Right.
gone.
Yeah.
But if they're involved and invested
Mhm.
and a part of a team,
They're less likely to leave if that's where their community is. That's where their friends are.
And more willing to have a discussion off of
Yes.
whatever that one thing was
Yep.
that rubbed them either the wrong way or they disagreed with. And they're
like
more
somebody came up here on Sunday and said, hey, we don't have a cross up on somebody thought you guys were having events here. They didn't realize it was a church. But he's a team member. But he was like, can we put a cross, so people know actually it's a church? I'm like, I never thought about like people thinking that's just an event center.
Yeah, right.
No,
seriously.
Tell me that about.
Yeah.
Because especially they know that it used to be at Awana Gardens.
But that's someone who's vested. He wasn't upset, but he's serving.
Right.
He's already someone who serves.
Yeah.
Who came to me and was like, oh.
Yeah.
Back when we were at the community center, it worked in our favor. They came to play basketball. And
And
we're walking the dog, and hey, we're at church. Come on in.
Let's go.
They have a lot of people to play with. You guys have all the ballers over there.
Yeah. They came looking to play in the gym, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna just stay a little longer, and we'll help tear down."
Yeah, we'll tear
Then
down
you can
and the
play.
courts will be yours.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
That's good.
That is good.
Yeah.
Great answers. Love doing this. Obviously, there's going to be a part 2.
Yeah.
Have you guys come
sweet.
back?
Yeah.
Talk
Thanks
more.
for
more
hosting.
things.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
it's super
everything
fun.
you do, leading us in our digital
Stop.
side. Right?
Good job, man.
Yeah.
Good job, Drew.
Well
You-
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited for what God's gonna do in this space, YouTube and digitally, and then for our church as a
Is
whole.
it
and the
YouTube or
campuses.
YouTube?
YouTube?
Okay.
How'd you say it? Say it.
Not me. I don't know. I hear some people say YouTube. Like my son says YouTube. Is it YouTube?
I've never heard it said that. Yeah. I mean, either work. I
Never
guess.
mind. I didn't think about how I'm saying it.
Talk to
I know.
Talk to Ethan.
Yeah.
It's funny.
YouTube.
It's like 2 O's.
YouTube. Yeah, YouTube.
Thank you, Drew.
Well, thank you
Thank
guys.
you.
very
Super
much.
fun.
Yeah.
Bye.